Almost 20 years after its release, Madvillainy is known as a classic today. But before it came out, this album was sabotaged and it almost failed. Many people thought this project was doomed in the worst way, that this one disaster was almost enough to put an end to this album altogether. So here's the story. Madlib, who is the genius producer of the album, was working on making some beats, and some unknown scoundrel actually stole the rough, unfinished version of Madvillainy from his hotel room and he bootlegged it. And the album got leaked onto the internet way before it was finished. After seeing this, the label thought that since this album was now free on the internet, that it was just over, that the album had no chance of surviving. But here's the twist that nobody expected. After that rough, unfinished version of the album got leaked, anticipation became even higher. People wanted to hear the full finished version of Madvillainy, and they were hyped for what they heard. And honestly, it's no wonder why. MF Doom is just legendarily amazing on this album. Many say it's his best work, but what also got people hooked was how groundbreaking the production was. The beats on this album were just like nothing else. Madlib showed off a style of sampling that was unlike anything before it. So in today's video, I'm going to break down what Madlib did on this album, how he made these beats, and how you can even use these ideas in your beats too. Before we get started though, if you can do me a favor and hit like or subscribe, leave a comment down below, let me know if you like these mini documentary style videos and if you have an idea for one that you'd like to see. Now, part of what makes this album stand out is how Madlib was able to take so many strange out there samples and restructure them into hip-hop beats. When J-Rock, friend of Madlib, asked him what his approach to sampling was, Madlib said, "I make the records dope." Madlib doesn't need samples that are convenient or easy. He's the one that makes them into dope beats. And I think one of the best examples of this on this album was the beat for Raid.
With no headshot, he said it's been a while. Got a breadwinner style to get an inner child to finna smile.
Which uses this sample. Now, part of what makes this sample odd and not particularly easy for a hip hop beat is its time signature. For example, if I took this sample and just tried looping it, you can hear, although it loops perfectly, it's a 3-bar loop, meaning the sample has a 3/4 time signature. If I follow along with the sample, you can hear 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And the problem with this is that 99.99% of hip hop beats are in 4/4, meaning I should be able to count 1, 2, 3, 4 along with the sample for this to work for a hip hop beat. And when it comes to samples that are in 3/4, there are only like 5 songs in all of hip hop that still sound good. So using a sample like this would have been a problem. But here's what Madlib did. He took each of these 4 bars in the sample and created a chop at the beginning of each and every one. And again, the problem with these chops is that they only last 3 beats. They don't last long enough to make a full seamless loop. So to fix this problem, Madlib does some smart chop extension techniques. He takes each of these chops and fills in these gaps creatively by repeating them for the first beat. This extends each chop so they play for a full 4 beats now. Now the reason why this is so smart is if we take a look at how one chop flows into the next, it's more seamless with this arrangement. And if we compare this to if Madlib filled the gap at the end of each bar instead, take a look at what's happening on the left side with the sample. We now get these big jumps in the sample as we move from one chop to the next, making it sound far more disjointed. But that's not all. Typically, if you did this with most other samples, you would run into the problem of the drums from the sample being in the wrong places. For example, if we listen to just the first bar here, you can hear we have snares here and here on the 3rd and 4th beat. And as you know, hip hop snares are typically on the 2nd and 4th beat. So we have yet another problem now. But because this is a bossa nova sample, which is a unique genre that doesn't often have large prominent drums like a soul sample would, it becomes much easier to layer your own drums to mask this issue. Another beat that uses a similar chop extension technique but in a more creative way is Figaro.
The rest is empty with no brain, but the clever nerd, the best MC with no chain you ever heard.
Now if we take the sample from this beat and we tried looping it once again, same issue, this loop is only 1.5 bars, which just doesn't work. So Madlib does something really smart here. He chops each and every single note in the sample, but this time, to get it to fit into a full 2 bars instead of 1.5, he extends the middle of the pattern. This now fits inside 2 bars, but not only does he do that, he also changes the rhythm of this loop. Right now we have a very straightforward rhythm with these notes playing on each and every single half beat. So Madlib took one of these chops and placed it at a unique timing, creating his own rhythm for his own loop using the notes from this sample. As you can see on the surface, these beats sound like straightforward loops, but you can see that they have some really intricate design ideas and sampling techniques to take these unconventional samples and actually make them work. Speaking of unconventional samples, here is yet another beat from the album that uses a really unique sample, Shadows of Tomorrow.
Because once upon a time there was a yesterday. Yesterday belongs to the dead, because the dead belongs to the past. The past is
which samples this Indian song. Now what stands out to me about this is that if this sample was given to a novice producer, this beat probably would have come out sounding mundane and boring. The part of the sample that's used for this beat is essentially just this plucked instrument playing the same note over and over, and then this loud blaring flute that comes in. This doesn't make for the most interesting beat when used like this, nor does it sound really balanced. And by the way, if you're a newer producer and you want to learn why your beats don't sound the way you want and what your beats are missing, check out Better Beatmaker. It's my online beatmaking program that will give you the help that you need. I know lots of online courses stink. I've been let down by a few that I've joined too, but so many of my members say that Better Beatmaker is just worth every penny. So if you're interested, hit the link in the description box below. But back to this beat. What Madlib does with this sample and the way he uses it is that he takes that plucked sound and he creates his own loop as a foundational layer using this plucked sound. And this allows him to bring in that flute whenever he wants and be able to do so at a much lower controlled volume. This helps the beat from becoming repetitive and monotonous and predictable compared to if you just loop the sample as it is. Madlib now has this new sound that he can use whenever he wants in the beat. But not only that, Madlib makes sure to keep the beat interesting on a smaller scale as well. Take a listen to how many smaller sounds and samples there are throughout the beat outside of this flute. We have this weird truncated sound that is constantly playing throughout the beat. We have what sounds like a bell pattern that's playing in the background every few bars. And we have this thick brass that comes in, which Madlib plays for longer or shorter periods. So not only do we have this big flute pattern that comes in from the sample, we also have these smaller pieces that also help keep the beat from becoming repetitive. So whenever you're making a beat that uses the same short sound that repeats the same thing over and over again, finding other larger and smaller pieces to work around your beat will become so key. By using them periodically and at different times throughout your beat, you can help your beat from sounding boring and predictable. So as you can see, even though it seems like these beats are simple, there's just so much detail and complexity. Madlib definitely showed why he deserves to be considered one of the greats of beat making. Now, if you're a fan of Madlib, by the way, I do have a full video breaking down some more of his production ideas that should be showing up next to me. So check that video out. Hopefully you've enjoyed this one. If so, hit like and subscribe. If you have an album that you want me to do a little breakdown video like this on, let me know in the comments. But yeah, I'll see you guys next week. And check out this video.